Welcome on in, everybody, to my Musket Rapier build. I have shown you guys this build a little bit already, but here is a fully fleshed out, thorough guide. And of course, if you already know the build and you're not interested in that, there's some gameplay here too. So the first half of the video is going to be the gameplay. Second half is going to be the guide. This build is really good. It hits hard. It's very mobile. It has crazy good healing power. And honestly, it makes me feel like they should definitely not buff Musket. If you guys want to see a written guide to this build, you can find a link to it down in the description below. Let's start with that PvP commentary. So I've got one fight, actually. It's a pretty long fight, but I like this fight a lot for the commentary because it shows off a lot of different aspects of this build and just gameplay-wise, the limitations of it. Starting right off the bat by looking at this shield player. When you're playing a build like this against a shield player, the only option you really have is to try to drop their shield, which means lots of heavy attacks. You can step back with the musket, use your shots to deal pretty significant stamina damage as well, but you kind of want to save those for when the shield is down. So yeah, I find that that's a tough situation, and those guys, at least one-on-one, when they're just staring at you, are very hard to kill. But when other players start showing up, and this guy is running a healing staff on the other bar, he'll get worried about his friends, and that's our opportunity to deal damage to him. So I right away just kind of switch to the other DPS. My goal here is to try to pull him away from that guy. I get a great combo. I blow my stam going over the edge, but I have my rapier ready in case I still need to evade any attacks there. And he decides not to jump, and that's smart. That's exactly what I want to do, is pull him apart. So he is playing the objective here, helping his guy flip and just keeping me off of the center circle. And I just keep trying again to put a bit of damage in, but as soon as I go up the stairs, they don't pursue. A third player ends up coming in, and I start putting some shots into this guy. I notice right away that his shield is down, and he is actually pretty squishy. So if I catch him with his block down, I can get some good damage into him. He comes around the corner with his flail. He goes for the smack there, and I just go right through it with my flesh, and I catch him with damage, getting really good shots into him. After the rapier damage, unfortunately, he blows a lot of healing, and I am not able to capitalize. I don't jump off the edge, just kind of wanting to keep my height advantage here. And there's the play with the trap. Super risky, I think, to have gone for it there. I should have dropped the trap sooner, but it ended up paying off. I did get the riposte and the healing that I needed coming out of it, but I end up popping my ultimate anyway, just to make sure I'm okay. And then I go off the edge here, drop the potion again. I'm sloppy with that stamina, guys. Like I said, I got to practice up. I don't know. Whatever. I end up kind of in a bad spot, but thankfully I break enough distance with the haste that this build has, and I come back into the center, and we've got a friendly player. Now, I'm sure you guys have noticed up till this point the healing power that's coming in. It looks like I almost have a pocket healer just dumping heals over time on me all the time. And that is that healing breeze. There you see it proc again, 386 health per second, and all the damage that I just took there was just healed away very quickly by the healing breeze. And here I get caught by a really nasty stun on the hatchet player. I go for the flesh through, and again, 425 health per second from the healing breeze. Just crazy amounts of healing. And that right there is not only why the healing breeze is so useful, but Tumbler Boots was proccing that on cooldown. So yeah, that was really good there. That was really good of the build. Definitely kept me from dying. I dropped down behind here, and I'm pretty aggressive. The other player here is being kind of timid, but this build has good healing, and I have surprisingly good fencing capabilities with enemy players like that. And there you see, catching a couple guys in traps, I'm able to put some good damage in. The group splits and decides to go after the mage instead of me. And that is that's due to the heals, I think. You make yourself an unattractive target when you're hard to kill like that. But this mage player, he's doing great. He's kiting them out as well, and using his ice gauntlet, his fire staff, just to hold that distance really well against these guys. And this guy goes for his ultimate. I catch it on the riposte, and there I finally catch the healer with the backstab. Unfortunately, the fellow mage player goes down, but as he goes down, I think he takes down one more player as well. And now it's a 2-on-1, and yeah, this is where the fight gets really interesting, because these guys play well, and their builds are scary. These guys are running real glass cannon assassin builds, and it's a build that, you know, I think one-on-one can be very difficult to fight, because when they get close to you, they are very threatening, and my aim isn't fantastic, so yeah, I'm trying to play smart here. I know that these guys are a huge threat, and I know they're very squishy. And there you see I land that huge combo on this guy, and he just manages to escape In the footage here, guys, I don't have any of my additional nature damage. And that really, really makes me wish that I did at that moment, because that might have been the kill. And oh my god, then I just barely escaped. The other guy just putting huge damage into me while I'm trying to put that finishing shot in. And a healer ends up coming in, and this isn't good at all. So I decide to back up, try to get a bit of terrain. First guy comes around the corner here, and I throw my trap down. Honestly, that's my biggest plan here. Fight around the traps and try to get somebody to step in it. And if they do, I can get some healing. Unfortunately, I just take a lot of damage. This guy, he is fast. He's reading my moves well. And that's a big reason why I wanted to include this fight too, because, you know, I think 1vx is tough because you often will come by opponents that play really well. And how you deal with them is you have to be very careful. And this guy with the healer, this is an incredibly threatening fight for me. Because I can't really target him. If I burst him, it has to be clean and fast. Otherwise, the healer is just going to shoot him right back up to full health, and if I take a moment to try to burst the healer, I'm very susceptible to his attacks, and there you see, he's got great spacing. He's clipping me at the end of all of his attacks here. I managed to get a good read on that incoming gap close, though, and break the distance through, and there I put a shot into the healer. He steps in my trap. This is my chance. I go for a bit of damage with the rapier, read that he's coming in, and there's that 1vx riposte that I told you guys about. So freaking useful. Well, actually, that's later in the video, but you'll see that later. Yeah, the other player being very aggressive, I was able to reliably get the counter stun, but now he's reading that riposte, and I'm going to have to be very careful how I use it. And like I said, this guy plays well. He is very dangerous. Here I catch him with his stam pretty low. Unfortunately, he manages to get huge counter damage, and that's the issue, trying to get close to this guy. He's got 2 melee weapons and a beautiful read on that riposte, and he gets me with the light attack. Well played by him, but I think all around that was a great fight, just showing off the different strengths and weaknesses that this kind of a build has. And it's not just a backline musket sniper, but you could play it like that, honestly, if you want to. So let's take a look at that build, starting off with the attribute page. 350 dexterity, 150 intelligence, and 100 constitution. I think this is the best way to run this. Honestly, 100 con gives you quite a bit of health. That 10% health bonus it gives is definitely worth, I think, the investment in constitution. And just healing-wise, we got a lot of healing scaling from our weapon damage thanks to the healing breeze on the rings. So having really high weapon damage, especially on the musket, is really great for this build as well. So yeah, you could go more con if you wanted on this build. I think if you do that route, you probably want to give up the 50 dexterity here. Or if you really want to, you could even go for 25 or even 50 focus. Up to the user here, but you definitely want to have that 150 in intelligence for the 10% elemental damage, the increased light and heavy elemental damage attack, and all that good stuff. And then, of course, the 300 dexterity point, giving you that that kind of cleanse to stuns and roots when you swap weapons every 30 seconds. Super useful. Honestly, one of the biggest reasons why I like running Musket Rapier is that we are running a dexterity-based build, and all dex builds get access to this. Now let's take a look at the gear that I'm running. Of course, I've got the finisher. This is such a good rapier. Even if you aren't playing a bleed build, you put Keenly Jagged on the finisher, it can do crazy good damage, and it gives your back bar weapon incredibly good damage too. I think finisher's damage is pretty comparable to a rapier that is built as a pretty decent damage rapier. Obviously, you could have some better perks here, but yeah, I can't complain too much about finisher because it really makes your other weapon strong, and it's not a terrible rapier in itself. The fact that we're playing a dexterity-based build with some intelligence means that we have some of the highest weapon damage that you can get on rapiers, so this is going to hit hard regardless. And then, of course, the musket, the syncretic musket. This is my absolute favorite musket because it's so good. Attunement, Keenly Jagged, both fantastic for outgoing burst damage, and then, of course, Keenly Jagged to help proc the finisher bleed damage, super big deal. And then Refreshing Power Shot. Normally I would run accelerating traps on musket, like you guys have seen me in the past, but Refreshing Power Shot is crazy good. If you have just 4 pieces of refreshing on and you go for the Refreshing Power Shot, you can get your cooldown down to like 3 or 4 seconds for your next power shot. That is crazy useful in this scope of bursting people in a short period of time. I mean, you can do a power shot into the powder burn and sometimes even get the next power shot off if you have the last perk in power shot and you land that headshot. So yeah, you can do crazy good combos with this. And if you want to go all out, you can run the Nimble Coat for refreshing and go for 25 focus. And you can literally do a power shot headshot into a roll and follow it up with a power shot. So this is crazy good for Musket Burst. And when we're playing such a heavy damage build, this combo is definitely going to catch people. And it gives us that last bit of firepower that I feel like, you know, Musket kind of feels like it's been missing, especially when you play higher health on a Musket. So yeah, I would highly recommend this if you haven't tried it on your Musket. And then, of course, I've got Augmented Aberril on here to make half the damage focus, and then 8% Nature Dot on it. On the Rapier, I have the Aberril as well, except I've gone for the Void Dot, of course, so that if I land a musket shot, quickly switch to the Rapier and attack, I have both dots ticking at the same time, instead of my strong musket dot getting replaced by a weaker version of the Nature Dot. So, moving on to the gear. First piece here, the Solemn Crown. The PvP gear is fantastic for this build. It's fantastic for PvP in general. If you guys can get your hands on this, I highly recommend it for light armor at least. This is pretty bis. And it's not just the Solemn Crown. I've also got Grasping Futility, the gloves as well. Both going Refreshing, Shirking Heels, and Ellie Aversion. Those are the 3 perks that I kind of want across all my gear in PvP. I think that's just the best, I don't know, combo for how I like to play. Lots of movement, lots of cooldown reduction, and of course, really rewarding dodges with those Shirking Heels. And Ellie Aversion, just tons of elemental damage. Most ranged attacks are going to count towards elemental aversion, so you can't go wrong with that. Then, of course, stacking a lot of thrust protection. All of the gear here has the 2% nature damage as well. For Musket, I think because it's a burst-based build, it's definitely worth it at this point. You could go for a different one on your Rune Glass gems. It's kind of up to you. I tried with the stamina recovery as well. That felt really nice to play, but again, up to the user. And then taking a look at the chest piece, I've got the Drag Attack. Now, honestly, I would like to swap out health here for a different perk if I could. But, you know, that's the way it goes. I think ideally health for refreshing like I have on my light pieces would be perfect. But on my Iron Man, I have those geared limitations. You guys kind of know that. So, yeah, that would be the dream. And then the legs, I've got Shirking Energy and Accelerating Traps. So, again, ideally this Accelerating Traps would maybe be on this chest piece over here. And then I could have Refreshing and another Ellie Aversion, or Ellie Aversion and Shirking Heels or something on this instead. But this is the best piece that I have, and man, Accelerating Traps is a crazy good perk for Musket. Even if you're not, you know, having it on your main weapon, the movement speed bonus is fantastic. That's 25% movement speed when we throw the trap down. Well, 24% because it's not fully 700 gear score, but yeah, crazy useful. And then, of course, Tumbler's Feet Wraps. And this is a double whammy for this build. Of course, we've got 5 Shirking Heels on. Ideally, we would have 5 Shirking Heels on. And then having Tumbler on top would just give you crazy heals when you dodge an attack. But the reason I love Tumbler so much here is because it has a 1-second cooldown. And on the ring, we are running Healing Breeze, which on heal will give you a 19% weapon damage heal each second on a 10-second cooldown. So there's only a few situations in which you would actually catch yourself not getting the Healing Breeze on cooldown with Shirking Heels, but this at least alleviates those few situations, making sure that when Healing Breeze is on cooldown, is off cooldown, you are going to get that fat heal over time. And that's why I would highly recommend Tumbler Feet Wrap here. I know a lot of other people, they like to run different things for kind of bursty musket builds, but you know, I'm not stacking in power outside of the nature damage and just kind of what Musket has access to it. So, yeah, I gotta say, I love the feet wraps. I love the feet wraps. The Fortify they give is definitely nice, too, for survival. And then taking a look at the jewelry, Tanglevine Amulet. This is pretty much BIS. Health, thrust protection, and stamina recovery. I really like this. You could argue Divines is a good option here instead of maybe the thrust protection, but I think stamina recovery is a must-have, and the health is hard to justify getting rid of, but up to the user there. And then for the ring, the Pride and Joy, we've got Hardy, Refreshing, and Healing Breeze. So I have Refreshing on here because I'm having trouble getting a ring that has nature damage with Healing Breeze and Hardy. Turns out getting the craft mod to make Healing Breeze stuff is incredibly hard on an Iron Man. It only drops from jewelry reward crates and from the PvP track rewards, and I haven't seen it yet, so yeah, I would love to be able to make a 700 gear score version Or maybe just turn this whole build into Void because you can get a ring, but I would still need that perk to make that ring. So yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm screwed no matter what. I'm kind of locked into running a 625 ring here. If you guys are like me, don't feel bad about it. It's still fantastic to run a 625, but get a better perk than Refreshing on it. And then, of course, I've got Endless Thirst. And it's up to you if you want to run the Ankh on this build. You definitely could because we've got tons of incoming healing that would benefit from it. But yeah, I do think Endless Thirst is better. The crazy heals that this build has, and then adding the crazy strong burst from the potion heal, it makes you a really unattractive target. And I think there's a good argument to be made for something hitting you and you instantly go back up to full health versus them hitting you and you go back up to 75% health. People don't want to target you when you're healing so quickly, and that's definitely a big part of, you know, PvP. It's a mental game. So I think for that reason alone, it's definitely worth running Endless Thirst, but in the sake of combat, I think having access to a stronger burst heal can save you from bad situations where a weaker one wouldn't. So again, up to the user here, but I really like Endless Thirst, and Regenerating is definitely my preferred perk as the final perk on this guy. So of course in PvP you want to run the best consumables you get access to. This build doesn't use any magic, so we can get away with running a fire potion on here. I like the fire because it's definitely the most reliable, and look at that. That's where Endless Thirst is really awesome too. It increases the duration of this. So yeah, it's actually kind of nice. You get like 47 seconds or some dumb shit like that of fire resistance on a 90-second cooldown, and that definitely can come in handy. And then, of course, health, regen potions. The Hearty Meal is definitely one I like to mention for this build because we have the Endless Thirst on. You get more healing from it. So, again, another reason why I love that Endless Thirst. And the Hearty Meal has no cooldown. You can break distance and use it to heal up when all your other crap's on cooldown, or if you don't want to use your cooldowns. And then last but not least, the food. I use the fruit salad because I have trouble reaching the max stat jump points that I need for this build if I don't run a 44 stat food. This is probably the cheapest food if you're not an Iron Man. As an Iron Man, this is probably the easiest food to get as well, so I'm assuming it's the cheapest for non-Irons. Don't go for the 48 food. It's way too expensive unless you can find a really cheap one of it. Otherwise, this is more than enough. And then the Powerful Honing Stone. I know I always say that the tier 4 one is enough, and it really is, but I've gone to tier 5 because I have a huge collection of tools, and I've been getting motes like crazy, so I can actually afford these now. And that 1% additional damage, brilliant. Can't complain about it. Of course, you can always run the Desert Sunrise. I got screwed out of mine, so I no longer have it, but I'm sure you guys can buy some. And taking a look at the resists, we've got 23% thrust resist and 11% just all across the board elemental resistance. So I favored not really leaning toward any particular element outside of just having the fire damage reduction from the potion here, but yeah, the thrust resist is crazy important in PvP. This build also has one physical aversion because of the Tumbler Feet Wrap. So we're looking at around 27% thrust damage resistance against incoming physical ranged attacks and 27%-ish elemental damage resistance against incoming elemental ranged attacks. And I just noticed one of my rings is actually missing the gem, so we'd be looking at a little bit more elemental resist if I had that. Alright, so let's go over the weapon mastery. The Rapier tree, I mean, you guys have seen this from me. This is my basic bitch Rapier tree. What can I say? It's the best Rapier tree that I like to play. I know not everybody loves running riposte, and in the footage you saw I did get caught because of riposte there, but again, when you have evade, I think you can see when someone will dodge your riposte and just counter with your evade right away. So it is, you know, kind of a waste of the evade to get for the save there, but riposte is so good 1vx. That's really the thing. When you're 1vx, people are very aggressive, and that's why I like it so much. If you're looking for more of duels and stuff, you might find more success running Flourish and Finish or Flurry over riposte. But yeah, this is otherwise the best in slot 1vx Rapier tree, in my opinion. And then let's go to the Musket. And this is, you know, I've run this tree quite a bit, but I've made a few variations over time. Of course, heavy on the traps, and then the lethal combo. So when anybody steps in those traps, it is game over for them. You'll do crazy damage with this build. I mean, well over 6 to 7k power shots. It's gross. I'm sure if someone has absolute crap gear, you can hit them for like an 8k plus power shot, but I haven't seen it myself. most people in OPR aren't running the absolute crap gear. So yeah. Anyway, I only go for the first 2 perks in Power Shot because I don't land a lot of headshots in PvP. If your aim's really good and you're confident in it, go for it. Or if you're trying to run that Power Shot into Power Shot, you need to have this perk to make that happen. But outside of that, it's kind of up to the user. I love the Empower here. I know this build can go well over Empower cap with the Musket, but I definitely think it's worth it to still have multiple sources of Empower. You're not always going to have all your sources of Empower up, so even if you're pushing over cap, being at cap as long as possible is going to let your musket hit as hard as possible. Plus, the thrust damage on the musket has trouble approaching cap, so you know, for the sake of the thrust damage, I think this is worth it alone. And you can see here I've gone for the successful headshot gain in power. Haha. It's because it's just 1 perk instead of 2 there. But I do like the heightened precision for the more Empower you can stack from that. And of course, optimal range gives you a pretty decent amount of increase to your base damage. So definitely worthwhile. Yeah, and that's basically it. I hope you guys like the build. Again, if you guys want to see a written guide to this build, you can find it on my website, pvpnewworld.com. There's a link down below. I'm streaming again on Twitch. I'm getting slowly back into it. So if you guys want to come catch a live stream, go ahead and check out my Twitch. Big thank you to all of my patrons for supporting the show all this time. And a big thank you to our sponsor, ExpressVPN. Have a good night, guys, and I'll see you next time.